definition when any picture, photograph, drawing, sculpture, motion picture film, or similar visual representation or image of a person or portion of the human body that depicts nudity, sexual conduct, etc., any book, pamphlet, etc. We know that there are books in the library in a section that would be for minors, if you want to say, we're talking 16 and 17-year-old young men and women. Those are there. And so, as one student said in some of these letters, whoops, I won't show you a prop, that she was talking about this prurient and what all that means, and saying what might be sexually arousing to one is certainly not to another. Who is to judge that? And folks, I just appeal to you that nobody on this floor, I would venture to say, believes that there should be pornography to our young children. And I am in agreement 100%. But this bill doesn't do what it needs to do. And again, it's local control. I've talked with my local library boards in my district. They have a policy. The procedure moves right along. If somebody objects, they certainly have that right. It goes to an elected board, and that elected board will make a determination, and there's an appeal process. If up in any district, wherever we want to say this isn't working, then they need to elect new library folks. That's all right. That's what we do. Why do we have a city council? Why do we have a county commission? Those local boards are who should be making this decision. So I would appeal to you, not that we want pornography, but because we already have a obscenity law, and if somebody breaks the law, we have remedies under our law to take care of that. And again, we are bringing in causes of action, and we already have this. I heard over and over in this body that it's a parental right. These are parents' rights. Why are you taking away parents' rights? And we talked about this and over, and we're like, no, I agree 100%. I don't recall a time ever that I took my young children in elementary school to the public library and dropped them off to be babysat. We chose books that were appropriate for whatever their age was. When they became in high school and they had assignments, or if they were studying something, we'd go again to the library. Back then we even used the World Book. We didn't have internet. But folks, again, our high school kids shouldn't be subjected to the same language as what you are saying, because we are saying, I think as a body, we don't want any of these materials in the hands of our young, impressionable, small kiddos. K through 5, I could get behind this bill. But for my high school kids that are saying, please, don't take away our rights. And we believe that we have a First Amendment right to read this material. I'm concerned that we're setting the state of Idaho up for a lawsuit under the First Amendment. And so I will just leave that and ask that you push your red light and that we are able to move on. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. For the debate on the motion. Jump 7.
Mr. Speaker, to debate the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
So just to address a couple statements that have been made, the one gentleman said that we're trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. There's too much evidence throughout the whole state, especially in the small town that I live in, that there's a problem. You got Meridian School Library down here, and you know there's just too much evidence that there's a problem. The good lady from 6, she just, in her own words, said that under no circumstances does she believe in pornography, but yet she's getting thrown under the bus. Then you saw this body have to recess and go in the back room because there's so much tension. That is the town I live in right now in a nutshell. You have longtime friends at each other's throat, and they're so angry at each other they can't even carry on a discussion to figure out how to fix the problem. The question is then, how do we fix the problem? I don't know. I just know one of the biggest obstacles in the way of fixing the problem is what the state did, and they probably had good reason at the time, was to exempt schools and libraries from our obscenity laws. I actually wish this bill would have been two separate. I wish there was one for schools and one's for libraries. Because the good lady said that the parents can go into those libraries with their kids and make sure they don't get books that they don't agree with. And in a library, I absolutely agree with her. In schools, especially grade schools, they take the whole class in. One teacher takes the whole class in. You can't expect the parents to be right there with them every time they go in the school library. So then we're back to which parents are we going to allow their rights to be, you know, the right of them to restrict books, and which parents aren't. It's a very, very complicated situation. And I just want to bring a different perspective. The schools, the school district up in Riggins is in trouble no matter what they do. Because if they try to restrict the access to books, then they're in trouble for censoring. If they don't restrict the books, then they're in trouble for giving pornography to kids because they're exempt from our obscenity laws. The school district and the school board members cannot win this argument because no matter what they do, they're going to be thrown under the bus for that umbrella that we put over saying that they cannot be prosecuted for obscenity laws. It's a very, very complicated thing. I applaud the efforts of the gentleman for bringing the bill and have the courage to take the fight on that you know you're going to be in trouble, or not in trouble for, you're going to be ridiculed for. What's the perfect fix is the discussion that we've got to come together and fix this. And it has to be done at the state level because at home our school board has books waiting to rule on, determined by what we do here in this body. And if we're not willing to take it on and fix it, what do we expect them to do? So, thank you.
Thank you, gentleman. Gentleman 13.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate the bill.
Gentleman has the floor to debate the bill.
Unanimous consent to refer to other legislation.
Unanimous consent to request. Is there objection? Hearing none, the gentleman has the floor to refer to other legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the comments of the gentleman from District 7 there. The problem that we have, and what we tried to fix last year with House Bill 666, it's been stressed today that we have obscenity laws, and the obscenity laws will take care of it. They will not, because it is exemption written into the obscenity laws currently for librarians. That's the problem. So House Bill 666 last year said, we're going to take that exemption away. When it got to the Senate, our counterparts in the Senate said, you know what? We don't like that because if these librarians, if you take their exemption away, they're going to go to jail. Well, that's not the intent of what we were wanting to do, but that's how strongly the state of Idaho feels about obscenity. You give this stuff to kids, you're going to go to jail. So this year we come back with 139. Hey, we'll do a $10,000 penalty. We'll try a civil penalty. The committee in this body said, hey, that's a bridge too far for us. We feel like that penalty is too strong. No problem. So we came forward with House Bill 314. After the bill failed, 139 failed, we met with the Library Association. Here are some asks that they have that we gave them. They said the way that 139 was written, it really could be a per incident, or a per book. Kid checks a book out on Monday, mom doesn't find out till Thursday, but he checks another one out on Wednesday. It's now a $20,000 fine. Would you guys please limit that to per incident? So no matter how many books Johnny checks out, it's $2,500. Absolutely, we can make that concession. That's a fair concession that we gave to the Library Association. They said, there's attorney's fees in House Bill 139. We feel like if there's going to be lawsuits brought against us, that we should have the ability to recover damages as well. We said, that's a fair point. The longer we talked, we said, what's even fair? Let's get the attorneys out of it. Neither side will get attorney's fees. So the debate that's taken place today that this is going to be running amok for attorneys, no compensation in there for the attorneys. It's another concession we gave to the libraries. Third concession that we made is they said we don't want the penalty going to the librarian. It should go to the board or the overseeing agency. You know what? You're right. Let's do that. So we made that concession. The final concession that we made was that a child cannot bring the lawsuit. It's got to be brought by a parent or a legal guardian. Those were all concessions that the bill sponsor made with the Library Association. The sticking point, and they said, at this point, Mr. Chairman, we're going to have to agree to disagree. That's the penalty. We will never agree, as a Library Association, we will never agree to a penalty. And I said, well, we are going to have to agree to disagree because if you break a law, there has to be a penalty for it. It's like selling an underage kid cigarettes or beer.
Yes, sir.
There's a penalty for that. Same thing if you break this law.
Yeah, you're such.
When this bill came to the State Affairs Committee, Mr. Chairman, I made the decision to allow the content to be talked about in committee. But I removed the page. The reason I removed the page is because the stuff was so graphic and so inappropriate, these kids have no business seeing or hearing about it. I walked away from that hearing and I told my wife, I said, I'm more concerned now than I was a year ago with what's going on in our libraries.
You remind me of Jimmy
A
Swaggart.
gentleman came up to give his debate. He stuck up Larry Flint, Hustler magazine, on the podium. He stuck up another pornographic magazine. And finally, he stuck up a book that's available in your local library. This is the question he posed the committee, and this is the question I will pose to this body. He said, in order for me to go purchase this Hustler magazine, he said, I went into Hustler Hollywood in Boise. He said, I could not go in to the main section of the room and purchase it. I had to go back into a private room, behind a sleeve, purchase that. He said, why does Larry Flint do a better job of protecting people against pornographic material than our own libraries?
He's dead.
Another misconception that's been brought up today, and it was referenced, is that these books are being banned. There's comparisons to Nazi Germany or the Communist Party. That's a chilling effect. This bill does not ban any books. I cannot be any more clear about that. All it says is you're not going to put them in a section of the library where children have access to them. You want to put them in the adult section? Great. As we had committee testimony, we began to ask, what about this book? Where is it at? No, that's in the section where eight-year-olds are at. That's in the section where preteens are at. I'm telling you, Mr. Speaker, this stuff has absolutely no business being in the hands of our children. Another argument that's been thrown up today is, what about computers and cell phones? Those are purchased with your own private dollars. This policy is affecting taxpayer dollars being spent. And I don't believe the citizens of Idaho want their taxpayer dollars being spent on stuff that kids should not have access to, that can be placed in another section of the library that their parents can get this for them and make it accessible to them if they still want to read it. So, Mr. Speaker, there has been great compromise on the legislation. I want to be very clear. The Library Association still doesn't support the bill. They appreciate the concessions that we made, but because there's a $2,500 penalty, they said we're going to have to agree to disagree on that and let the legislative process play out. So, Mr. Speaker, it's I believe it probably as light a touch as we're going to be able to do on this issue and still have some teeth in it that if there's a violation, that there is recourse for parents. So I'd ask for your green light. Thank you.
Further debate on the motion? Gentleman from 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would be remiss if I didn't get up and debate the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good ladies and gentlemen of this body, good representative from District 13 laid this out really well. And so I'm not going to belabor a lot of that. I do want to discuss something that happened over this weekend. I got quite a few emails from the same teacher/librarian that gave me stories of kids that were thankful for these books being in there. And so I read these stories, and one of the stories was from a junior. So let's think about junior. 14 or 15, 16, 17, somewhere in that area. My daughter's a junior. She just turned 17. And they listed the book that she pulled out of the actual library there that she was so thankful for. Now, I think our librarians do a great job, but this was a book that this teacher/librarian told her she needed to read because she was going through some things. So I decided I wanted to find out what this book was about so that I actually understood. If any of you guys have the opportunity, you might want to look at it. Probably not too far into it. When I found it on YouTube for free. 10 hours worth of book. I'm about 5 hours in and I had to shut it off. I couldn't do it anymore. I'm trying to force myself to go through this book so that I can tell this teacher, this is the problem. And I can't do it anymore. This book was worse than a rated X movie that I can picture. It is incredible how bad some of this stuff is. The language, the sexual content, the laws that were being broken, and this was in our library. And this was given to a junior in our library. Telling them, I don't know if it was a girl or a boy, didn't say in the email, telling them, you should read this. We're giving this to our kids. And this is just not okay. If you have to be 18 years old to go into a rated R movie, why do you get a book that's like an X-rated movie handed to you at 15, 16, 17? So I will be voting yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Further debate on the motion? Gentleman 24.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from 32 stand for a question?
Would the gentleman from 12 yield to a question? He looks like he's 32, but he's from District 12.
Thank you for the compliment. Gentleman yield.
Sorry about that. Good gentleman. One of the things, when we hear people talking about this, we hear about libraries that seem to have a lot of stuff, and libraries, they go in and look and they can't find anything. Have you, when you were putting this all together, have you picked up any data that would indicate, how many books were found? Where were they found? Were they taken out? Were those areas where they were taken out from, those libraries, were they repeat offenders? Can you kind of build a picture for us that way?
Gentleman 12.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, good gentleman from 24. The data that I do have is material was found in 55 schools and community libraries in 30 cities. I'm currently waiting for the report back on the list of books that were extracted out of those libraries.
Thank you, good sir.
Gentleman 24.
Debate very briefly.
Gentleman has the floor to debate the bill very briefly.
I noticed you added that. Thank you. Everyone agrees on pornography, right? Everybody has a line in the sand that we agree on. I don't understand the language on Section C, any other material harmful to minors. That seems, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but that just seems like it's all over the place. And also the other language that I don't remember, the good lady I think read here, is very, very open. And this just seems like such a broad area of potential disagreement that all of the energy and money and everything would be poured into that broad area of disagreement. I just don't feel like this focuses in, and if I don't get it, somebody needs to explain it to me, but it looks to me like the subjectiveness of that broad area is going to defeat us in a number of ways. And so I'm unable to support that while I admire the energy that's gone into this. I think we need one more round.
Hey, good gentlemen, further debate on the motion. Good gentleman, 31.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Gentleman would like to debate the bill.
If I could, please, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has the floor to debate the bill.
Thank you. So, I too appreciate the energy that's gone into this and the thoughtfulness and the debate. There have been some very compelling arguments today, both for and against the bill, and I truly appreciate that. I come at it with a little bit perhaps different perspective. Maybe it's unique, maybe it's not, I don't know. I'd like to go after the authors of these books. I'd like to go after the producers of the movies. That's where I'd like to go. But I can't do it because I swore an oath to the Constitution that protects those people. And I don't think we can do that because we swore that same oath to the same Constitution. And I'm a little bit troubled that we're going to ask librarians and library boards to do what we can't do. Although I understand the direction that the proponents of this bill hopefully want to take it, and I'm very sympathetic to that. There is no one in this body that's more opposed to pornography than I am. I'm sure many of you are as opposed, but no one is more opposed. It is the scourge of our society, literally. And as an ecclesiastical leader in my faith for the last 30 plus years, I have had the responsibility of working with people who are addicted to pornography. Some preteen, some teen, some young adult, college-age kids, and some adults. The youngest being 12, the oldest started working with him when he was in his 70s and was still struggling with the addiction when he died in his 80s. I have seen pornography rip families apart. I have seen marriages that are strained to the point that you wonder if they'll survive, and some of them do and some of them don't. Pornography leads to the ultimate betrayal of a spouse many, many times. And it's a sad thing to witness, and it's a hard thing to work through. I'd like to briefly tell you a story, and very carefully, of a young man that I worked with. Started working with him when he was between 12 and 14 years old, and he was addicted to hardcore pornography. I'm not talking about stuff that you might see that you might use your imagination. I'm talking hardcore. Stuff that he visualized and that he watched on his phone. And when his parents found out about it, they took his phone away. And so he went to the family computer. His parents were pretty smart, and they put every parental block and every firewall on that computer you could possibly think of. And he broke through all of those and accessed it on his folks' computer. When they found that out, they took all of the electronic devices out of the home. And so where did he go? He went to the public library. Didn't go to the bookshelves. He went to the computer. And the librarian was pretty smart because she put firewalls on the computers, and he broke through all of those. So when his parents found out about that, what was the repercussions? Well, it wasn't to come down on the librarian. It wasn't to come down on the library. It was to put efforts into the young man. And so what happened subsequently was every effort was put into helping this young man overcome the addiction. His parents put him on a good nutrition plan and a good exercise plan. He was given jobs to do. He was encouraged to read good books and to memorize scriptures and hymns and all of the things that good parents would do to help their young son overcome this addiction. He was helped with professional counseling. It's been many years since I've seen this young man, but when I saw him last, he was married and had a family and was doing pretty well. But you know, that addiction is a lot like alcoholism. He'll fight it out his whole life, as will others. And it is a struggle. I will tell you that this is my solution. I think we need to support our libraries and our librarians. I think that Story Hour needs to be filled to capacity with good books and good groups and parental oversight. I think that the bad books that we've talked about need to be on shelves and collect dust. I think the good books need to be dog-eared and be read many, many times. I think that movie houses, if there's an R-rated show, it should be shown to empty seats. And I think family-friendly movies should be shown to overflow crowds. And I think that's how we rectify what we're facing here. I think it's a big challenge to ask librarians to do what we can't do. But I think it's doable if we collectively as a society, not just you, not just I, do everything we can to make sure that we lift one another up and that we go to good movies and that we read good books and that we make sure that our kids are close to us and that we know what they're reading and what they're not, and that we know who our librarians are and who our library boards are, and that we do our very best. I'm just not sure that this bill accomplishes that in the way that I foresee it, and I'm really worried that we're putting our librarians and libraries in a position to do what we can't do, because we can't do it. Those people are protected by the Constitution, and we'll honorably support them in that, just like we will other constitutional issues. But I disagree with it, and I refuse to pick those books up. So, and by the way, thank you, good gentlemen, for not subjecting us to what's in the other room. I've had enough emails that I'm sick and dadgum tired of it, to be honest with you. I don't need to be subjected to that because I don't want my family subjected to it. So thank you for not doing that, and thank you for your passion in this matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Jones, for the bid on motion. Lady from 4.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate the bill.
He has the floor to debate the bill.
Thank you. There's been good debate on both sides, but just some points that I need to bring up from conversations I've had and from our area. My parents in my area are frustrated because they've done what has been said as remedies, and it's not remedying the situation. We also have a library board that isn't an elected board, it's an appointed board, so they can't change the board in that specific library. They go to all the meetings, they do what they need to do to remedy the situation, and they can't get it fixed. So they've come to us to help find a solution for them. I was with a group of young parents, and the words were literally said, "The libraries are dangerous. We don't take our kids to the library." And that broke my heart, because I took my boys to the library, and as they got older, they didn't want me standing over their shoulder to see what books they were picking out. They would come show me afterwards, but they wanted some independence, and I was comfortable with letting them go to the children's section and looking at the books and there not being any issues. But parents nowadays don't have that comfort level anymore. They do have to stand over their children's shoulder when they're picking up books from the library. And at this point, there's parents that won't even take their children to the library anymore. So, having said that, that is why I'm in support of this bill.
Thank you, ladies. Further debate on the motion. Gentleman from 22, the younger gentleman from 22.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate in favor of the bill.
Gentleman has the floor to debate in favor of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Those older or more seasoned representatives learn very quickly that we should have snacks in our drawer. Those of you that have not been here very long have probably just learned that lesson. I apologize that you had to learn it this way, but that is one of the things that happens while we're here. I appreciate the debate, and it's been good, and I will try to keep my comments somewhat to a minimum, but I do feel I have to voice at least a few thoughts that I have. Why are we doing this? It's kind of the big question, right? So we should always ask ourselves, why do we have any legislation? Is there a need for it? And I think we know the need. We've said in our statute, in our codes, it's a policy of the legislature, it's a policy of the state, we don't want porn getting into kids' hands. Right? I think that one we can probably all agree on. Check that up for agreement. You're right. And everybody else will be held to that standard of law except for librarians. And we tried to fix that last year, trying to fix it again this year. Is there bad books in the libraries? Yep. Are they in the kids' sections? Yep.
No.
They're there. My library, we had them. We brought them in here. You could go look at them all. Disgusting stuff that should not be looked at by anybody. A couple observations that I think is quite interesting. And I'm sure I'm going to get an objection here, but I'll tell you why you're wrong on that in a second here. I'll wait for it to happen, though. I find it interesting. We said, on one hand, kids can get this stuff. They can get it on a phone. They can get it at the internet. They can get it already. But then we say, but they need these special books to help them with a problem that are only available in the libraries. That's where we got to get them, because this is what helps these kids when they're having problems. And so it's important that we have access to all these kind of books. But yet, we said on one hand that we could, I guess, access them all on the internet. A few minutes ago, we debated House Bill 313. See, nobody's going to object? You can object, Mr. Speaker. Can I explain why I can say that without having to reference it?
Sure, gentlemen.
It is not pending legislation, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 313 is dead. It is not pending. I can refer to it if you would agree.
Good lady. I think we've already brought up the mention that we've suspended rules on other bills anyway, so I think it's in order anyhow, because unanimous consent has been requested that way all the way. I'm going to have to do some research on your other question, though.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And when I have further debate on another issue later on after this one's done and over with, I'll probably do the same thing. My understanding is if it's not pending legislation, we can refer to it just like we can House Bill 389 from last year without having to ask permission.
I believe you need to refer to it. It's like reading from a bill and things like that, but let me do a little more research when we finally get to lunch in another hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We got to keep these things lively somehow. I know everybody's trying to drift already, and I got to keep it a little bit lively. But a few minutes ago, as we debated that, I found it interesting that parents weren't getting involved. And that's why we needed to have the school get involved. Because, the parents weren't there to help take care of these needs for these girls, and yet now we turn around and say the exact opposite. The parents are the answer, and the parents are going to make sure that the kids don't get these things, so we don't need to have other controls, I guess, put in place. Local control. I hear that a lot in this body, and for good reason. A lot of people are very concerned about that local control. I think it's crucial, though, that we have a little bit of look back on where local control issues come from. The state gave the power to the federal government. The federal government did not derive their power from the states. The state granted that authority to the federal government. The cities and counties did not grant power and authority to the state. The state granted the authority there. all powers are derived from the state. It's important that we understand that when we talk about these local issues. The reason that's really important, if you want to go back a long time ago, the federal government decided that it was important to address a moral issue in this country. And they addressed it from the federal level because some states didn't want to address it. It's a local control issue. That's what we kept being told, right? Local control. We can control it. We can take care of it. We elected people here. Thank heavens that the federal government did overreach a little bit there and stop slavery. I think it's appropriate for us as a state to stop pornography getting into the hands of our children. The last thing I really want to talk about briefly is this. To me, this boils down to what's the appropriate use of our dollars. I've debated that numerous times here in front of this body. What's the appropriate use of our dollars? I don't think it's appropriate to buying material that's objectionable. I'm not stopping anybody from getting it. Get it wherever you want. Don't use my tax dollars to buy it. And even worse than that, just make sure the kids don't get their hands on it. That's all. That's all we're asking. Just don't let the kids get their hands on it. This legislation does that. If you don't want your librarians to worry about getting fined, then don't put the material in front of them. It's simple. It's not hard. That's all we're saying. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to debate, and I encourage your green light on this.
Thank you, gentlemen. For the debate on the motion, the older gentleman from 22.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate in favor of the bill.
Gentleman has the floor to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good ladies and gentlemen. I've sat here listening to this argument and I'm just baffled by it. As a previous owner of a convenience store, I'm not allowed to sell tobacco, liquor, or pornographic material to kids under 18. I don't know if this body would tell me you can go ahead and sell it, just make sure the parent needs to follow the kid into the convenience store to make sure they don't buy it. That's not our law. Our law says I can't sell it. I'm not allowed to, and if I do, I get punished by the law, because that's what the law says. It's not allowed. Pornographic material should not be available to kids. And now we're arguing whether a library gives it and they shouldn't be held liable. I'm held liable, as I was, as a previous owner of a convenience store, of getting a ticket and getting fined for selling liquor or selling tobacco or selling pornographic material to somebody underage. Why don't we hold the librarians to that same standard? And we all say we're going to go after the librarians. If you don't sell it or you don't put it out there, you don't have a problem. This law doesn't affect you. You're free and clear to run your library. But if you're going to hand pornographic material to kids, yeah, you are in trouble. And you should be. And I'm just baffled by, we think parents have to follow their kids into the library. They don't follow their kids into the convenience store, but they depend on the owner of the convenience store not to sell them liquor or tobacco or pornographic material. And so I think we have to depend on the librarians to also not distribute material that should not be in the hands of kids.
Thank you, good gentlemen. For the debate on the motion, good gentleman from 19.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate the bill.
Gentleman has the floor to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I didn't have any debate prepared. I just wanted to comment on and try to establish some sort of through line through a number of observations that I've heard here today, because I think when we leave here, we all need to be on the same page when it comes to the fact that none of us want pornography in the hands of kids. But it's not simple. It's not simple. If it were simple, we would have defined pornographic materials, but we didn't. Why? Because this is not simple. We heard earlier from the lady from 30 that harmful to children is a very easy definition with a pretty standardized threshold test, and you just got to check these boxes. But when I look at line 31, my interpretation of it is that harmful to minors includes one of the following. So let's just pick one. If I were a plaintiff's attorney and I just had to pick one, I would go down to page 2, line 13, section B. All I would have to show is this, that the quality of any material which as a whole has the dominant effect of substantially arousing sexual desires, also another term that's not defined. Now, I'm not saying that alone should be what determines whether this is a bad bill or not, but it's certainly, you start asking these questions, you want to dig a little bit further, right? So let's dig a little bit further. Sexual conduct means any act of homosexuality. Sexual conduct means any act of homosexuality. Now let's take that and plug it in to what we're going to be holding schools, including private schools, responsible for. A private school shall not make available to a minor any picture of a person that depicts sexual conduct. Private schools can't have books of two dudes kissing or doing anything that homosexuals do? Come on. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad bill for that reason, but it makes you want to look a little bit further, doesn't it? I heard someone say in response to a question that some sort of audit is underway and that 35 or 55 books have been taken off the shelves. When I hear that, what I hear is that the policies that are in place at the local level are working. People have concerns. They file the paperwork or they do what they need to do. The locally elected board says, I don't like this. They take the book off the shelf. That's the system as it was designed and as it works. But I've also heard people make reference to parents in certain places asking for books to be removed and the board declining those requests, sometimes for years. It's possible. If my kids were here, they'd say that I'm one of the most unreasonable people, so I'll just use me as an example. It's quite possible that some parental requests are unreasonable. That some parental requests to have books taken out of a library because I don't like it, maybe that doesn't meet the board's threshold test, and I think that's okay. I mean, if you saw how many YouTube filters we have in our computers at home, you would know that we're not interested in just making sure that children have access to these issues. Which brings me to one more concern. We're using taxpayer dollars, unless a private school gets sued, we're using taxpayers' dollars to create a financial incentive to do something like, for example, I go to the adult section and I find the book, The Joy of Sex, which is clearly a book about sex. I take it off the shelf, I walk down to the kids section, when no one's looking, I tuck it in between a couple of books, then I sit around, read my own book for a couple hours, then I come back and I take a picture of this book just sitting in the middle of the kids section, and we think we are comforted because we use terms that we're unwilling to define, but in this particular instance, the word promote, a librarian or a library is promoting this book if they merely, quote, put it in circulation, just having it on the shelf. So now we're using taxpayer money to create incentives to move sex books down to the kids section, and then we're saying it's in circulation because it's on the shelf. No one was giving these things out. So I just want to say it's possible, and in some parts of the state it sounds like it's probable, that materials on the shelves at libraries are the proximate cause of real harm to children. I'm willing to concede that fact. I'm also willing to concede the fact that we could all identify a lot of proximate harms to kids in Idaho. So what I would ask of this body is if you are still on the fence and you're not sure how to vote, here's why I think you should vote no. One, we can do better clearly articulating what is not permissible. It's not enough, for example, to define harmful minors as, this is just, if you boil the water out of the sap and you just bring it down to its syrup, this is what, I kid you not, this is what it says. Section 6, line 31, harmful to minors includes any description or representation of sexual conduct, which we know means any act of homosexuality. It means any description or representation of sexual conduct when it depicts sexual conduct. I mean, if it takes us 3 paragraphs and 2 pages to define pornography, and we don't even use the word pornography, we probably should do better than this. I want to thank the sponsor for coming back to the table and continuing to try to make this better and tailoring it. But I am quite certain that this bill as written is probably going to be found unconstitutional for vagueness. And that means it's going to come with a $250,000 attorney's fee that probably should be reflected in the fiscal note, because we know what happens when we pass unconstitutional laws. It's not free. And second, I hope that anyone here today who is a hard no for reasons of perceived moral superiority, that you take the bill's sponsor and the proponents of this bill, you take what they have to say sincerely, you go visit some of these places where these things purport to exist, and you come to the table and you try to help fix it. Don't leave this up for other people to fix. If this is a real problem, go on a fact-finding mission, sit down at the table with the people who are trying to fix this, and help make this better. I think this is year 2 of trying to get this. I think this is better than last year, but Mr. Speaker, I'll be voting no, and I think I'll wait to see what next year's version looks like.
Thank you, gentlemen. For the debate on the motion, good gentleman from 4.
Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker, to briefly debate for the bill. I want to just answer the good gentleman from 19 and make the remark that the debate that's gone on in North Idaho regarding some of the books that are available through public libraries, these are not books that are on the borderline of being good or bad books. This is absolute pure smut. There's absolutely no question about it. This is pure pornographic material that is available to children in a particular library that has an appointed rather than an elected board. It's been two plus years of debate on these books, and the community is not able to get these books removed. So let me move on. I want to point out that I believe that the libraries have already acknowledged that they may not distribute pornography to children, that they know that it's wrong. And you know how I know that? Because they put restrictions on their computers that do not allow children to access pornography. However, if that same material were in the book form, they would give it to the child. There's a dichotomy there. There's a real problem. They know it's pornography, but since it's printed, it's okay. That's wrong. I will absolutely vote for this bill. This is a terrific bill.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good lady from 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to debate briefly.
Good lady has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The good gentleman from Ada County, I can't remember your number, had mentioned, this bill came through last year and try it again this year and next year. Each year, I'd say our society just keeps shifting further into more morality to the left, to a less moral society. And I will remind the body that last year the bill was to give the same exemption, to take away the exemptions that librarians have to give children pornography. And so that bill passed this body with every single Republican except 2 voting against it. And I just ask you, where are you on giving pornography to children? That is what this bill is aiming to do. And the testimony was disgusting, quite frankly. And I remember last year creating a packet on this, and I ended up calling the Attorney General's office, and I said, am I going to get in trouble for child pornography? Because that's the stuff we have available to our children. And if you haven't looked at the packet of information on the books we're talking about, or I guess the material, it's not the books, it's actually the material in the books that's the problem, the pornography. I encourage you to do that and just ask yourself, do you want a 6 or 8-year-old child looking at this kind of material? And I can't imagine you would.
Thank you, ladies, for the debate on the motion. Gentleman from 28.
Mr. Speaker, debate the bill for the second time.
Is there anybody who wishes to debate the bill for the first time? Good gentleman, 14.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate in favor of the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm a little bit perplexed. I was given some of these books. I actually had a group of people come and at first I didn't believe that the books were actually in the libraries. They actually took pictures of themselves holding the books in the library and showed me that no, these really came from the library. But reading through, I actually made it only through about half of a page, set the book down. I actually felt ashamed even reading it. Then they handed me another one, did the same thing. By the time they had me a third book, I couldn't even do it. And talking to these people have been fighting for now several years trying to get these books out of our libraries. And they say for every 2 books they get removed, 4 books come in. So they are at a losing battle. We keep saying the system is what's working. Well, the system's not working. It's failing. We've got more and more people fighting the system, and it's still failing. So it is our responsibility as legislators to deal with this. And to be honest, I would say if the devil was sitting up there in the gallery today, he'd be eating popcorn, laughing hysterically, because this has become almost a joke for what we're dealing with. This is pornography. This is horrible, horrible stuff being pushed into youth, into the kids in our community. And we know it ends badly. We know from several people. I mean, we've heard testimony from people that know people that have dealt with this in their own family life. And I mean, this leads down a bad road. So why would we do this to our kids in the first place? So I recommend everybody, please press your green button.
Thank you, gentlemen. Further debate on the bill for the first time. Hearing that, good lady, 33.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order.
Favor.
Point of order, Speaker.
Gentleman from
28.
wait, sorry.
I believe she's already debated the bill.
Mr. Speaker, I have not.
We did earlier and at the end of the last debate, and she was the last one at the last debate. So hopefully it's a trend. Good lady, 33 has the floor to debate the bill. Just helping you out, good lady.
Mr. Speaker, to debate in favor of the bill.
Good lady has the floor to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, friends. Some thoughts here that with some of the things that have been said. First off, when I was 9 and 10 years old, my mom would let me go to the library. My mom didn't take us to the library. She didn't go into the library with us, none of that. But she let me go to the library by myself. And I wandered around that library, checking out books. I happened to love horses. I checked out all the Walter Farley series. That's the Black Stallion Returns. I checked out Man of War, Indian Paint, all those horse stories. And you know what? That reading was fantastic. It gave me a chance to explore, to read, to improve my ability, which allowed me in 7th grade to not have to take reading like everybody else, since I was on a 12th grade level. That was my one accomplishment. But it's disturbing to think that now we're saying, no, parents have to be with the kids through the library. It's the parents' fault if they're not right there. And I thought the library was a place to go and explore. Now, certainly, obviously proper ages, but I felt like I was at a good age. You know, one of the things in the debate or the presentation, I kept asking the chairman of the Association of Libraries is what age? What age is appropriate then for the child to go to the library by themselves? And he wouldn't answer. 8, 10, 12, what age? I mean, at my club where I work, Apple Athletic Club, you can come at 12 years old by yourself and work out and play basketball, swim. So what age can you go to the library? Some misinformation I think have been given. Librarians are protected, and their protection is found in 18-1517 subsection D. Schools and libraries have an affirmative defense against prosecution for disseminating obscene materials to minors. They have an affirmative defense. They can do it. And what we're trying to do is say they can't do it. I don't know how we can make that much clearer. In other words, what this just stated is it's the recognition that there's obscene material and minors are able to access it. That's an admission right there in 18-1517. And we're trying to say, no. Now, I don't know which of you here I'm really speaking to. I know some of us have our minds made up. But I hope I'm speaking to someone that will yet change their mind and consider what we're actually going to do. We have very few responsibilities as legislators, actually. Certainly we know we have the appropriations, But some of our responsibilities also include upholding and maintaining and supporting our freedoms and our parental rights. That is actually our responsibility, to maintain parental rights. And I believe this fits right in that category. John Adams, after the Constitution had been written, as he was talking about it, he mentioned that the Constitution was made for a religious and a moral people. And let me stress that again, a religious and a moral people. He said it was wholly inadequate for any other. Because you see, when the people begin to, I'll use the word sin, and allow material, so this is a kind of material, decadence, that brought down great empires. When we allow our society to fall into that, that's how great empires are brought down. That's the problem. And our First Amendment was never intended, it never protected decadence. That's not what the First Amendment is about, and I know I work on that First Amendment all the time, especially that freedom of religion, freedom of speech. Some had brought up that this would infringe on the ability to witness the great works of art. That's not true at all. That's not what this talks about. It's when it provokes that sexual desire, deviant, etc. Like, for example, you can steal, this was brought up last year, you can still view David, the naked David. That's completely permissible. Those are great works of art, completely different category. So I would just ask us, what is it, what message are we trying to send? I'm trying to uphold our societal values, traditional family values, and we have every right to dictate those right here in this legislative body. I hope you'll give it a green. Thank you.
Further debate on the motion for the first time. Good gentleman, 28, care to debate the bill for the second time. Good gentleman, 13, excuse me.
Mr. Speaker, to debate the bill.
Gentleman has the floor to debate the bill.
I too, like everybody else, probably got 100 emails on either side of this, and it is a tough one. And as many people have said, a good gentleman from District 12, I think his heart's in the right place. I think he's working on it and trying to get there, and that's all right. But on the other hand, you have to think, what is a library? It's a storage of knowledge. It's where people go to find answers to questions. You're looking at these books, and again, nobody wants to be handing porn to minors. But there's also the idea that one group is going to tell the other group about diverse families of all kinds of diverse people that we know better than you. The library in my town, there's professionals. They have collection development policy and age-appropriate areas. And, I believe they work hard at providing a good atmosphere. But I've also been reminded about how Idaho feels about parental controls and parental responsibility. One of my emails pointed out to me that libraries are not a daycare, that the parents do have responsibility, but they also noted that and one of the good lady earlier alluded to the fact that it takes a parent or a guardian for a minor to get a card. Well, cards these days have the ability that when they check something out, it's online. The parent can check to see what's being checked out, what's been on the card. They can monitor these cards, and they should be. But with the civil penalty, it gives that chilling effect that we can come tell you, if we, whomever we are, and whatever we decide is inappropriate, have now somewhat been weaponized to bring suit. One of the other clever people that sent me an email, I got a lot of them, mentioned the Spanish Inquisition, where they tortured people that disagreed. But they didn't have to torture everybody. Because eventually all they had to do was show them the tools, and those people fell in line. Sounds like the civil suit. Yeah, we don't have to sue everybody, but we sue enough of you. You'll get to the point that we're in charge. Regardless of your boards, regardless of your policies, we will decide for all the families. Really? You think of that chilling effect that it'll have on the folks. Again, we talked about all the rules that are already in place with regard to minor pornography. You know, nobody wants to see it, and at least in my district, I don't think they want to see it. But it's also been pointed out that we can go and check it out ourselves and make sure that's really not happening, that it's not just some anecdotal story. We can go check it. We can walk through those doors and go see what's up there. I think we need to take a step, take a breath, think, what will that effect have in practice? And again, you know that these lawsuits being brought, especially if some of these definitions, vague definitions lead to lawsuits. That's what they're built on. Everybody wants to protect their kids. Everybody's got the responsibility to protect their kid. I protect mine and my grandkids. And that includes making sure you've got good boards and good policies in your libraries. But I just think about those that think they know the answers for everybody else. And I think we just need to be cognitive of that, of what this in practice, the effect it would have. That's it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Further debate on the bill for the first time. Gentleman from 31 rises for the second time. Is there anybody for the first time? Going, gone. Good gentleman, 31 has floor for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be very, very brief. I just think it should be noted that my experiences, and the reason I'm where I'm at on this is because of the dozens, plural, dozens of folks that I worked with and I referenced earlier, not one became exposed to pornography in the library. You'd be surprised where they were exposed. An older sibling, an uncle, even scout camp, but none from the library, and I guess that's one reason I'm coming from where I'm coming from. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, gentlemen. Further debate for the second time. Hearing none. The gentleman from 12 care to close. Just a second. Was there somebody who wanted to debate for the second time? Good lady from 30 to debate bill for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I was hesitant to get up, but as I've listened to the debate, I just feel like in so many instances we're talking past each other because we're speaking to a narrative and not to the actual language of the bill. So I would just encourage the good members of the body to take note of our subsection 6, our definition, number 6, on page 1, beginning on line 31. This definition is a long sentence. In order to meet the definition of harmful to minors, material must meet a number of criteria, including it has to be specific types of material such as nudity, sexual conduct, sexual excitement, or sadomasochistic abuse. And it must also appeal to the prurient interest of minors, and this is important, it must depict descriptions which are patently offensive to the prevailing standards in the adult community with respect to what is suitable material for minors. We're not talking about an isolated group of people imposing their standards on someone else. We are talking about material that is overwhelmingly offensive to the prevailing standards. If you look at the only other option here, which is our sub B, I would point the body to line 15, that this is material which has the dominant effect of substantially arousing sexual desires. It's not just a side note, it's the dominant effect. These are children. This is a standard that is observed by every other sector of society. And it's important that we protect children in the libraries, because the option is that parents decide not to let their kids go to the library. And that's where we're headed if we don't provide a standard.
It's further debate for the second time. Gone. Good gentleman, 12. Please close the debate.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members of the body, for a very good debate on both sides. I'm just going to recap over a couple things, and it won't be long because I don't know if I'm keeping us from lunch or not, Mr. Speaker, but at this point, dinner at least. I'm going to look at, again, we've talked about local control here, and our Idaho Constitution, Article 3, Section 24, gives us the responsibility for the promotion of temperance and morality. It's our job. We can talk about local control and try to push it back, but this is our job. This is absolutely within our scope to have the first concern of all good government is the virtue and sobriety of the people and the purity of the home. The legislature should further all wise and well-directed efforts for the promotion of temperance and morality. I appreciate what the good lady from 30 was just talking about. That's actually was in my closing comments. It looks like on page 2, line 47, subpoint C, this was brought up several times. I know the gentleman from 24 mentioned this, and he said, it seems vague, other material harmful to minors. All that does is points you back to page 1, line 31, subsection 6, where we define harmful to minors. So it's not vague. It's literally laid out on page 1, and it's referring back to that. I wrote down different notes from different debate here, and one of the things that was brought up was parents' rights. When I look at the parents' rights aspect of this, I work. So when it comes to a school library, I'm at work when my kids are going to a school library. So I won't be able to be there with my child. That's not something that's going to be a reality. My wife just said to me last week, hey, I'm going to take the kids to the library instantly since I'm working on this bill. Antennas went up. It's different for my wife who stays home and she's taking them to a community library versus someone who works is going to take them to a school library. We're not asking for the materials to be extracted from the library. And that's been said many times. This isn't a book ban bill. If a parent chooses to check out that material and show it to their kid at home, that's on the parent. That is absolutely up to the parent to do that. But we're asking that you take a reasonable step, just like you would in a movie store, to put in a section for those books that really shouldn't be allowed for my 6-year-old daughter. If you had kids standing here right in front of you, would you feel comfortable, and that's a question to ask yourself, to go grab that material out of the clerk's office and hand it to that child? Would you feel comfortable doing that? I guarantee you'd be prosecuted under Idaho law for doing that. Think about that. That's a reality. If you haven't seen the material, go take a look. It's unbelievable. You can't do it. It's illegal. So what we're asking here is libraries have to take a reasonable step. If they're going to have the material, take it a reasonable step. We've outlaid some ideas of what they can do, but we haven't mandated any policy that they should follow. The lady from 11, in response to one of the points that she made, there is no First Amendment right to give material that is harmful to minors. It's not a First Amendment right. There's been many different arguments for and against what can and cannot be in this bill and how it is going to come out. This is consistent with Idaho obscenity laws. The obscenity laws, the definitions that are used here are current code. It's not something I came up with. This is already an existing law. So we're asking that libraries take a reasonable step to restrict the material. And reasonable is something I think we should all be able to agree on. Reasonable is very understood in law practice, and it's something that we can agree on here. Take a reasonable step to keep our kids safe. I don't think that any of us should apologize for fighting for our kids and fighting for the morality of this state and for keeping our kids safe. So with that, I ask for your green light.
Thank you, good gentlemen. Debate is closed. Question is, House Bill 314 pass the House. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will record their votes. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Clerk will lock the machine and record the roll. Read the pairs.
Horman votes aye, Nash votes nay. Redmond votes aye, Cheatham votes nay. Healy votes aye, Petzke votes nay.
40 ayes, 30 nays, majority having voted in favor of House Bill 314. House Bill 314 is passed the House. Is a correction title.
No correction to title.
Hearing that the title of the approved bill be transferred to the Senate. Without objection, the House without advance to 15th order of business announcements. Are there announcements?